to remind you all to please, oh, to please keep your microphones off if you're not speaking in order to um, avoid interference. And also, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If you would like to share about this event on social media, I will share the suggested hashtags on the chat as well, and I will also share our social media handles. Thank you so much, and it is my pleasure to present our moderator for today, Ivan Ransom. Ivan, you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I'm so glad here with you all to present the professor, Dr. Richard Dasher. He is director of the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center at the Stanford University since 1994. And well, what to say about him? He's a true mentor. Throughout his impressive career, he has deeply supported the development of the many institutions he has been part of, leading both students and academia to further develop their interconnectedness with industry and governments. Moreover, his leadership has been vital to the flourishing of startup companies, business accelerators, venture capital firms, and nonprofits from around the world. This leader in the fields of innovation and technology is also a well-versed linguist, holding an MA and PhD from Stanford University in linguistics, and has an undergraduate degree in clarinet and orchestra conducting from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. And well, I'm Ivan Ransom, a cellular and molecular biologist specialized in sustainability. I'm going to be the moderator of this session. And just so that you know, this is a special address on the applications of innovative technologies and leadership among youth and addressing the climate crisis by the Professor Richard Dasher. So without further ado, thank you very much, Dr. Richard, for being here with us.
Ivan, thank you for your very kind introduction. I'm very happy to be with everybody here. I have some slides I want to share, and you'll see that on the first slide, really we have a picture of Stanford. That's kind of well known. But what you might not notice is that one of the angels on the Stanford Church is the angel of hope. And I think I'm talking to the hope for our future. And I'm very happy to talk to you about youth climate action and innovative technologies. So today, I'm going to start off talking about young people and startup companies. You're actually both very similar. And one of the things that you can do is disrupt things in a positive way. Then I'm going to talk about integrating technology-driven and problem-driven thinking. And finally, I'm going to talk about making your idea work, because sustainability begins at home. We'll talk more about that. Then we'll have plenty of time for a question and answer and discussion. So some fundamental things. What is innovation? Actually, innovation is responding to or anticipating change by creating value. Now, you can also respond by running away, or you can respond by fighting. But if you create new value, you're doing something uniquely human. And it is an intrinsic aspect of being human. It's also always been a characteristic of companies. If a company stops innovating, its employees lose productivity and its customers get bored and go somewhere else. So the process of innovation includes all of the steps and all of the activities from the creation of a new idea to its real-world deployment. There is no value created if you don't really get people to use your idea in the real world. Now, there's essentially two kinds of approaches to creating new value. One is to come up with a new product or service, and the other is to improve efficiency in some way. A lot of the new ideas are things that came out of people being frustrated, noticing inefficiencies. And several of the students on the panel today have great ideas that came exactly from that feeling, I'm certain. So one of the points, though, is you can also improve efficiency by stopping doing something. A lot of people talk about the new idea and the new concept, but they don't talk about the importance of change away from an old way of doing things. So in this kind of a big backdrop, technology is just a tool for creating value. We need to focus on how you're going to use the technology. So one of the points about this kind of innovation is that there is a thing called disruptive innovation. Most innovation is incremental, small things. Every year there's a new model automobile. Every year there's a new version of an iPhone. Once in a while, evolution will be punctuated with a drastic change. This is a disruptive innovation. And it's when the adoption of an innovation actually leads people to abandon the way that they used to do things. So smartphones have essentially replaced simple digital cameras, and online content streaming is in the process of replacing CD and DVD sales. One of the things is we're living in the middle of an industrial revolution. Depending on how you count, it's probably the fourth one. And industrial revolutions typically involve multiple disruptions. Our lives are totally different than they were when I started working at Stanford before most of you were ever born. But think about it. Climate action requires disruption of many of our current practices. We can't keep doing what we've been doing and hope to save the planet. Young people, just like startup companies, are intrinsically great sources of disruptive change. A startup company is strong at disruptive innovation because it's not trying to support its existing business. You know, startup companies are formed to change the world. What happens is they do, the successful ones, and then the startup company is now a big company worried about continuing its own existence. So you don't have to worry about existing business, and a young person is less tied to old habits. That means that you have a better ability to see new possibilities. You can focus with less distraction on achieving a single goal for positive change. And, you know, startup companies and young people will take risks that an existing company, like an old person like me, will not take. That's extremely powerful. But to understand this better, what do I mean by these risks? There is the risk that your new idea will fail, that you won't be able to deliver it. And there's the risk that even if you do, the market won't care. So every year, the new car companies do low risk innovation. This is where most big company innovation is, new model automobile every year. If a big company is going to try to make a major new technology development, they will almost certainly pick a market that they know very well. So the Nissan Leaf is a great example. That's what a big company tried to do with an electric car. For a big company also has tons of money for marketing, and so they are strong at taking low technology risks and developing major new markets. The smartphone really did change how people behaved. And it really took the marketing clout of Apple, building on things that go back to the BlackBerry and other kinds of devices, but it really took major company clout to get that into the world. It's where both of those risks are high that the big companies typically don't play. So Tesla Motors started out with a very hard technology problem, making an electric sports car. But who in the world would pay $110,000 for an electric sports car? And so they started at the high end of the market, and now as they've gotten bigger, they're moving into the bigger company play. Sure enough, as a new idea is incubated, these risks go down. And existing companies become more interested in what you're doing. The markets are giving you good feedback. So disruptive innovation is very hard. It often takes a long time to get people to change the way that they do things. Case in point, the Model T Ford. The Model T was what really started the automobile to be a disruptive innovation. And the automobile had already been around for 20 years before it really made a change in society. Now, what got disrupted? Okay, you can say the horse and buggy, but the thing that the automobile really disrupted was the city streetcar. When I was growing up, I grew up in a small city with about 40,000 people. 100 years ago, they had streetcars. But once the Model T came out with the price and the availability of gasoline, everything changed. So that does mean that to really create disruptive change, you've got to be in for the long term. The sustainability of the new idea depends on the sustainability of your venture, and that takes a long-term approach. So fortunately for people like me, this is why it's useful for young people to talk to people like me, to talk with mentors, not always to do what we tell you, though, right? I mean, you have a better vision than we do, but we can help you achieve this sustainability. One other point about disruptive innovation is it only happens because people choose to adopt the new way and give up their old way of doing things. That means that if you really want to be successful with your new idea to save the planet, the main thing you're going to have to do is to get into the human psychology and why people behave the way that they do. What kind of economic and social constraints do they have? And also, what are they thinking? What do they really want? It's very true that one of the classic mistakes for people involved in technology is to think that the idea, the technology, will sell itself. No, you really have to integrate the technology with the human awareness of the need for the technology. And sometimes you have to teach people about that need. They're not already aware of it. So how do you do that? How do you integrate technology-driven and problem-driven innovation? Well, this is what it looks like. Most companies have research and development groups, and they come up with ideas and they look for what they can do with it. That's technology-driven. Then you also have situations where people are frustrated with something, or they see an opportunity, a need in the world, and they think there has to be a better way, and then they have to go and do research and development. So a great example of this latter approach, this problem-driven innovation, was Uber. Two friends couldn't find a taxi cab, and they started thinking there has to be a better way. They had smartphones. If the smartphone did not exist, Uber could not exist. And they came up with the idea for having this kind of platform where people could give rides to other people and get a little money in the process. Then they had to develop the technology. There was an awful lot of technology development that did have to happen, but it started out with their sense of a problem. To speed things up, to be most successful, you really need to integrate these two approaches. So one approach to doing this integration of problem-driven thinking and technology-driven thinking is design thinking. So design thinking comes out of over 100 years of best practices in product design. The first and most important thing is that the design should be human-centric. You must think of the user first. That means, what does the user think they want? And it also means, what does the user really need? As the designer, you have to think about both things. You've got to look at the bigger picture, not just the job you were given. You have to think about people's emotions and aesthetics. The Coca-Cola bottle was designed over 100 years ago. It's a fascinating example. The Coca-Cola company was worried about a lot of competitors that were stealing their designs, putting things out in bottles that looked a lot like the old, pre-Coca-Cola bottle Coca-Cola. And so they wanted something that would capture the essence of Coca-Cola and be absolutely impossible to copy. So a design firm came up with the idea, but they went so much beyond what Coca-Cola told them. The thin waist of the Coca-Cola bottle, this skinny waist down here, makes it easier to hold. They did do what Coca-Cola wanted. They embossed the glass with the Coca-Cola mark, so you could not have somebody just tear off a Coca-Cola paper label and put on another label. The ribs on the bottle make it stronger, but the other thing is they imitate the coca leaf or the coconut. I'm sorry, not the leaf, the coca nut. And so this is, this is a great example of looking at users and what makes it functional as also what it makes it beautiful. Sometimes you have to be ready to redefine the problem that you think you are solving. People often ask for the wrong thing. There's this famous quote that is attributed to Henry Ford. We don't know if he really said it or not, but what he supposedly said was, if I had asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. So you really have to be ready to look at what the users are thinking and also what they really need. You have to be ready to challenge assumptions. Design thinking has all sorts of techniques to get out of the box, using ideas on Post-it notes and posting them all up and so forth. And the other point of challenging assumptions is to use diversity. Diversity has become an important concept. Thank goodness. It's about time. But we're not really taking advantage of it. We need differences of opinion. We need people who see problems from a different angle. A great example is if you're in a developing economy where there's not the kind of infrastructure developed in an advanced economy, you will see the possibilities and people's lifestyles in a very different way than somebody coming in from an advanced economy. We need to work together. So we also need to, part of design thinking is to get early feedback from people who are not involved in the design process, get some real world feedback and do it better and better and better each time. So what they usually show with design thinking is this set of steps from empathizing to defining the problem to ideating a solution, developing a prototype, and then testing it with the market. If you're technology driven, if you have an idea, this is where it looks like you're starting. Be sure and go back to think about the user, to think about what their life is like. What are they worried about? What constraints do they have? Go back to here, and you may find that you redefine your idea. If you're starting with the problem, then you're doing the system pretty much straight from the very beginning all the way through. So the point is, again, technologies are a great tool. It's how you use them. The real power of design thinking is that you understand people better, people's psychology and their actual behavior, not just what they tell you in a survey. Rigorous problem definition. In my opinion, the reason design thinking has been so successful at Stanford is because we have a culture in this university for not putting up with half-baked arguments. If you come up with something and don't have really good reasoning behind it and good evidence for it, you're not going to be very popular. So rigorous problem definition is a big thing in design thinking, and then getting out of the box, learning from all the ideas, even the ones that are crazy sounding. One day, some years ago, the dean of engineering here told me that, the best ideas that come from my research group, I think are absolutely crazy. So I give the students 6 months worth of funding to try them out, and they do things. So, getting out of the box is a really important point. And finding all sorts of techniques to get feedback from outside the design team without actually taking it to the market, because that can be dangerous. You need some sort of a test market. The people that teach design thinking have all these great things about role playing and future news reports. They did a project at Stanford where they involved more than 300 people in looking at the future of the university. And one of the techniques that they used was write a newspaper article about a change that you're envisioning for the future, act like it's already happened 3 years ago and how people are reacting. So, that kind of thinking about the problem from different angles is great. So, I think that there are particular problems for climate action with this kind of thing. I'm afraid that we have very high goals. I would love to stop using plastics in my life. We have, things that are desperately important for the planet. And we start to think about how people should behave, not how they will behave. So, a lot of it can be explained in terms of rational things like cost and convenience. Usually the cheaper solution is going to win, and the more convenient solution is the lifestyle people are going to adopt. And one other problem is that there's often a conflict between someone who tells you you ought to stop using plastics and you feeling like I ought to be able to use them. We've seen that big time this past year in the politicization of using masks. Ridiculous. But the nice thing about innovative technologies is that may tip the balance. If you have a new technology, it may make it more convenient not to use plastic. It may actually save you some money if you don't have to use so much paper products. And the other thing that helps tip this balance is the cool factor. People get really excited about new technologies and new ideas. We need to play on that to get people to use these new solutions for the planet. So sustainability begins at home. The startup has to be sustainable by itself. Both, for-profit companies as well as nonprofit companies and social impact ventures cause positive change in the world. You don't have to do a nonprofit. What's important is to find out what's right for your innovation. What's the business model that's going to be right for you? So a business model really involves the idea and the context. You've got to think about all of this. So you've got some product or service you want to provide, but you also ought to think about all the alternatives people have. What are the enabling technologies you need in order to have this product or service? One of the classic problems with biofuel plants was the environmental impact of the construction way overdid the environmental benefit of the plant. So, you have to watch out about this kind of context, right? Then you need some way to get money for the product or service. Actually, I should talk about the target market. There are two main groups in the target market. There are the people who use your product or service, and there are the people who pay. They're not always the same group. In medicine in the United States, I buy a drug, or actually I use a drug, but the insurance company typically pays most of it. So you need to keep both of those groups in mind, and you need to keep in mind all this psychology, right? Then you need some way to get support back, recognition of the value of the product or service that you have, a revenue model. There are all sorts of alternatives. There are new approaches in business. And innovation can come from any one of these sectors. You can take the same product or service to a new set of users. You can take it to the same set of people, but change from, for instance, pay by the minute to a flat rate subscription in a telephone contract. So a typical company basically is pretty straightforward. You provide the product or service, people pay you back. Now, sustainability for the company means generating revenue and generating a profit, because the profit is not only important to pay back the people who invested in your company, it is something that lets you expand. Let's say you've got a great idea. You've got to get it started out, but the world is a big place. You really want to keep expanding. You need profit in order to pay for future expansion. And the company may use some of its profit for corporate social responsibility. It may give money to good works. It may create its own foundation. Most impact investors are actually investing almost all of their money in regular for-profit companies. What they're looking at is the kind of governance that the company has, the kind of stated goals that the company has, but they're making money and then taking their returns and using that for the good works that they want to support. Now, there is this thing in the United States that's kind of not that popular called a public benefit corporation, a B Corp. And in the company's rules of operation, it specifies that some of its profit will go into a good cause and not to shareholders. So a regular company is a real possibility. So what's a nonprofit look like? A nonprofit that's not just talking about change, but is really trying to create change, is actually providing some sort of product or service to people who use it. But they're not the ones who are paying. You're providing this for the public good, and you're getting your operating money from government grants or foundations or individual philanthropy. So that's a pure nonprofit with no revenue from the product or service that they're giving. If you're giving free lunches to underprivileged young students in elementary schools, yeah, they can't pay. Their parents can't pay. You need somebody to pay, though. So that's what this model looks like. But most nonprofits are actually a hybrid. Most nonprofits get some revenue from the product or service that they give to people or that they provide to people, and they stay nonprofit. As long as you don't generate profit, you can be eligible for government grants and foundation support and individual philanthropy. This model not only is good because you've got multiple sources of revenue, it's good because it has a psychological benefit to the users. People feel like they are showing that this is important to them, that this has value in their lives. You meet the conditions that they can meet, but they give a little bit back. It may not be money, it may be social service. And so as long as you can keep this balanced, that's also a very good business model. So sustainability is the key. Technology is a great tool that may excite people about innovation. It may enable or it may even promote a change in behavior and attitudes, but you have to integrate it with thinking about the people as primary. You're not going to get people to do what they do not want to do. They've got to want to do it. So they may need to be educated about what they really ought to want to do. One question is, does your innovation lead to a lasting systemic change? If it doesn't lead to a lasting change, you're providing a great social service. Let's say I'm giving free lunches to kids at schools in underprivileged neighborhoods. That's great, but as soon as I stop doing it, nothing's changed. Those kids go hungry. And so you need to have something that's aimed at systemic change. And, you know, the other point is you also need to have an organization that will last long enough to cause this lasting change. You must use good business principles in order to do what your idea really deserves. This is not because you're trying to make money. It's because your idea, in order to be maximally successful, needs to be supported. And so that's basically the point of my prepared remarks today. If you can answer both of those questions, yes. If your innovation leads to a lasting change and you can keep your organization going long enough to make it happen, yes, you are a social entrepreneur, and we all need you. This is hope for the future. So that's really my prepared remarks. I'm happy to talk some more with a great panel of young people who've been doing some really interesting things. I read up before our session today as much as I could find out. Yvonne, let me give the floor back to you.
Thank you so much for your incredible insights. This is like eye-opening for me. I'm also like in a project, and I was like putting everything that you were saying in what we are doing, and I don't know, I'm impressed as well. The floor is not for me; it's for the um, other speakers here. So, is anyone here? Does anyone here want to uh, take the floor and say anything?
Sure, Ivan. I can start with a question for Professor Dasher. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how emerging technologies relate with climate equity. So essentially thinking through like climate equity and climate justice is finally becoming more and more of a conversation in climate action planning and climate change in general. So I'm wondering if you have any insights on how these conversations are playing out, either with on the policy side or the funding side, and if you think that there's any new technologies that might help level the playing field.
Wow, that's a big question. We could spend the entire conference on that one, right? I do think that climate equity is a consideration that needs to be put into just about every new idea that comes out there. You know, it used to be in the old days, you would do an environmental impact report. Really, people should make that universal for just about any kind of a new innovation. What's it going to do? The kind of equity where you, for example, if you're taking something that's buying and trading, right? You're looking at creating CO2, and then because you're creating CO2, you estimate the cost for environmental cleanup and sequestration. And so you take that amount of your profit and put it into something that will offset the problems with extra CO2. That's something that people are doing. I think that you need to be very careful to make sure that all of the costs are figured in. That getting that kind of balance on the equities is very hard. I do think that there are a number of new technologies that are offering potential for huge changes in the kind of impact we have on the world. It's, you know, climate is not just about energy technologies. It has to do with food production. So I'm kind of interested in things like vegetable-based meat, right? Because it takes a lot less it makes a lot less weight on the environment to do that kind of processing into a hamburger-like thing than it does to grow cows. And you know, the reason that I think it's interesting is the quality is getting to the point now that people enjoy them. Now they have to get to the point of reducing the cost. So this is why a disruptive innovation takes a long time. Carolyn, that's a great question. Did I address it okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Then I'm going to give the word to Kevin that he is raising his hand. So please go ahead.
Thanks a lot. I will start by saying, Dr. Richard, it was amazing, something you said, and I didn't think about it like that before. You said technology is used to, what was the word? Like to inspire people, to give hope. Yeah, you said to give hope. So that for me it was marvelous because first of all, normally we think technology is used only to solve an issue, but to give hope, it means that we can actually make a change just by using a technology. So my question would be about it, like what do you think in researching and developing new technology should mean not only for people but also for companies, about thinking it in order to give money just to research. And the second, it would be about normally when we do research, it's only focused for technologies. But could it be possible to research only on also on processes? And if so, using kind of processes like such as circular model economy model in a old company, could it be easier to change the company and now reinvent themselves into a circular economy model?
That's a hard one. Kevin, thank you for your question. You see things at product development that are obviously connected to activities, sales, what people actually do in their daily lives. But that rests on top of a lot of research that goes all the way to the very basic level where you don't really know how you'll ever use this new technology you're developing. Think about particle physics. Why do people do research into particle physics? One of the reasons is because there is a spillover where people who talk to each other from different fields, who have different ways of looking at things, sometimes come up with even better ideas because of talking to somebody on the basic research side. Not only do you need the fundamental knowledge in order to build technologies on top of it, this is why I think that the word for university really was based on the word for universe, right? You've got knowledge from many different disciplines, hopefully in a positive feedback for each other. Companies will devote some funds to research, but there's kind of a natural division of labor. Typically, the universities do the most basic research, and they're doing it with government money. When the companies get involved, you can usually see some sort of real world application, at least far in the future. And so there's a handoff where the university creates knowledge up to a point and then industry takes it over. Sometimes that happens very obviously through technology licensing. But remember, it also happens through going to university and then getting a job in industry. You are carrying the knowledge. So I think that it's important. One of the things we've seen from COVID-19 is the need for science and the need for innovation based on science. So I'm actually, I have to say, if there's one good thing that came out of this year, that's it. Speaking of this year, your project is called Resilience 2020, right? And I looked at it. It's a very interesting circular kind of economy model that has a biodigester on the front end. So this is great. But the challenge is going to be how to get it into the population, how to get it to spread. That's your next really big step, and I hope that it will go well. But getting people to see that this is a better way, not just for the planet, but for their own lives, will be very powerful. Good luck with it, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now I want to give the word to Daniela, please.
Thank you. Dr. Richard, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I think everybody was truly, just moved because we really didn't see a lot of, well, I hadn't really seen a lot of perspectives on how to approach the problem that we are addressing. And kind of my question relies on these psychological barriers that people tend to have, which we're seeing with the mask thing and how it deprives people from their freedom. And I think my question really, I don't know if it's really a question, I just want to know your opinion on it, on how to truly engage with people and try to provide them with an alternative. So in a way that they don't feel like it's depriving them of their right to choose, right? And I think so many scientists and activists have this part wrong in the way of how they address the other, like their communities and their families. And it's just, in my personal life, it's been a really big challenge with my family, just trying to address these types of issues. And what we really want to do with the startup is try to make everything accessible. And that barrier, that psychological barrier, is huge.
So, yes, it really is. And I think that your project, the Color Book, is also a really interesting one. It's a platform for people to change their lifestyles, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
who's going to be the people we'll listen to? Who will people listen to about these different steps? I get some people to be your allies who are not obviously your allies. You know, if it's a bunch of climate change activists, then people will react, right? But think about it if it's a well-known, like, local TV personality. And not only get them to say that they like it, but get them to do something and get them to say how their life has changed because they did it, right? And that this is fun, or this is cool, or that kind of successful, positive message does a lot, an incredible amount. But you have to be always sensitive of whether I'm the best person to say this or whether I should get my friend to say it for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely.
And use these people. Most of them care. I think that deep down inside, you'll find that a lot of people care. And I think sometimes people are reacting against what they know they ought to do, just to be contrary. But, you know, if they see that that is not gaining them anything socially, or, you know, you isolate them and move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much. Fernando, is there anything that you want to ask to Dr. Richard?
Hello, Dr. Richard. Thank you so much for opening this session for us. And I want to ask you if Stanford University can help here in Los Mochis to know more about the concept of an intelligent city, a smart city, and we can inspire to develop as one.
Okay, thank you. And I like your project. FERSAAMB, is that how you say it? FERSAAMB?
Yes.
Yeah, this whole thing about waste management is a really big issue. So I think that Stanford, again, this is part of the same fundamental thing. The basic role of a university is going to be to do education and research. And so the professors, who are kind of the core of the university, a lot of them are really good people who really care about things. And they're doing a lot with, you know, all sorts of causes. But at the end of the day, their job depends on what kind of education they do and how much research they write. So it's kind of, you know, they're great places to talk theory. But here's another limitation of the university. I think that a smart city requires such a diverse group of people to understand that it's almost beyond the kind of conceptual ability of a single individual to work with it. And universities do great teamwork, but I actually am more interested in nonprofits that bring together people from the university, along with people from the community, along with people from industry, along with other stakeholders, and make sure all the stakeholders have a part in this. That's the kind of thing where you can get really good ideas and see the kind of practical problems for implementation. Yeah, universities are in danger always of becoming ivory towers, right? So I think that it's possible to work with Stanford. The Precourt Energy Institute has a lot of work that is going on in regard to climate issues and in regard to energy systems. The Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, right? That's what you call it at Stanford for years, not just civil engineering, but civil and environmental engineering, is a great place that people are looking at a lot of the modeling problems and a lot of the kind of implementation problems. But remember that it's a university, right? People are going to act like university people. So find a good contact and, talk to your contact and see what kind of research is possible and what you really need. There are some really good big programs out there, though, that are looking at smart cities. One that's in Northern California is called Meeting of the Minds. And so I'd look at all of these. Great question.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
So these are all wonderful questions. Does anybody in the room have a question? I would be happy to take something either from off the panel, or if the panel would like to follow through and do some more, that would be great.
I think Kevin was raising his hand.
Yes, but you already answered some of it. It's because through our project, Resilience 2020, we have around 10 people working from different academic background, working on developing a new, not new, but perfecting the eco technologies that we are using, and developing it with a necessity that people require for their homes. Right now we are starting with some eco techniques, but we know that there are plenty more. There's not only the ones that we have in our minds, but students in different universities are already developing some of them. That eventually we can prove them through our project and see if they are good for the society, and that's how we can connect. So linked to the previous question and the answer you said is that we are obviously really interested of connecting with university, in this case with Stanford, and see if we can, for example, if we have a need and work with Stanford so students can help us research something, or because they're already researching on something and we need some information from it, or proven their eco techniques that they already developed. So is there a correct path, a right path to go and connect with Stanford? I mean, the last answer you said, you need to know the person in order to connect with the university. So are you the right person? So that would be...
I have a feeling I may get a lot of emails now. Actually, I think that start with what you know and the people who are close to you. That's very important, okay? I do think that Stanford is, a world-renowned institution. And so there's a lot of good stuff going on here and a lot of good people here. I think that the real issue, though, is make sure that you have a reason to talk to somebody and a well thought out kind of ask. Carolyn, I see your hand up. Why don't you say something here?
Oh, actually, I had another question.
Oh, another question. Okay.
But yeah, I think that's great advice, though. And there are also a lot of clubs. Like I know the Alumni Association has a number of clubs that people can join. And yeah, definitely happy to put you in touch with anybody that might.
Yeah. There was an old thing in Silicon Valley years ago about degrees of separation, that in the entire world, you can get introduced to any person anywhere with a maximum of something like 6 people making introductory, intermediary introductions. So I do think that, it's really important to have the geographic reach to the resources that you need in order to be successful. Now, it's great to have endorsements, it's great to have advice and so on and so forth, but you really need the people on the ground, and you need the people who can get to the ground. Yeah, I would be happy to talk to people afterward. Seriously, I do accept a lot of emails, and I really do try to answer them. But sometimes I get way behind because of that, right? But the thing is, look for people. I'm not unique. There are all sorts of good people all over the place. You just have to listen to what they say and then make difficult decisions. You can't always do just exactly what they tell you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, Carolyn, your question?
Yeah, I was wondering, in your presentation, you're talking about how typically the low cost item or process wins out, with the exception of a new technology and sometimes having like a cool factor. I was wondering if you had any examples of that in the sustainability field that you could think of.
Well, what about e-vehicles? I'll go back to Tesla. One of the first people I knew who bought one of those really expensive sports cars was a professor of electrical engineering who's a lot older than I am. And he really wanted an e-vehicle. And this was the first one that performed the way that he really wanted it to perform. Now, this is a business question, and different markets have different attitudes toward price. One of the places that's softest about prices, where you can bring in new things with new features and get people to pay more for it relatively easy, is Japan. And so there is an incredible early adopter market for new things in Japan. One of the places that's actually hard is China, because China has a sense of this price and how much can you put into the package, but I'm not going to pay one penny more than that price. So you have to know the kind of dynamics of the group you're trying to get to. And, you know, I do think that a lot of the kind of technologies that you see really match kind of basic human things. There's a lot that can be done with frugal innovation, or the book that came out 20 years ago was called The Bottom of the Pyramid, where, you know, 3/4 of the world's population are living below what we consider to be poverty. So to work with people like that, I toured through all of the India Institutes of Technology a few years ago, and I was absolutely amazed to see some of the ideas that came out of there, because they were solutions that I would have never thought of. The reason I would have never thought of them is because I don't live in that kind of rural environment. I was delighted to see them. I'm happy to support them. So, you know, find some people who have really good ideas. Solar powered lights for villages has to be combined with some sort of energy storage technology, but D-Light did really well. And other kinds of, I remember one that I saw in India was an ATM machine for people who are not literate. How do you deal with an ATM machine when you don't really read characters? They used an old style telephone receiver. So, you know, there are great things that come out, and yeah, look around. You'll see lots of neat things.
Sorry, Ivan, can I ask a question really fast?
Sure, go ahead.
Awesome. I was just wondering a little bit about how technology has been kind of stigmatized of not being inclusive because of how marginalized people and communities don't have access to it, right? So as a startup right now, we're trying to deal with a problem that is really unjust, because it actually affects the people that are marginalized the most, right? But we're trying to tackle it from a privileged point of view because of the people that actually have access to technologies or smartphones or all of this. So it's been really weighing on my mind how we are trying to address a global issue that is, and like the climate justice thing, and how we are right now unable to bring in these communities because we do have plans in the future to save a part of of the revenue and just completely focus it on helping communities and all of this, but it's just the idea of like the clashing idea of how technology is not inclusive.
Yeah, and I have to say that one of the most difficult aspects of innovation is that no change happens in a unitary way. There are the people who move forward and there are the people who don't. And often the people who don't move forward are worse off than they were before the change. And that's something that the technology people have a lot of responsibility for. Just like the scientists have a responsibility for always looking at how their science might be used. I do think that the digital divide is a huge issue that we have to solve and have to be inclusive in our approaches to things. Again, that's one of those should do questions that you need to get people to do your work for you and say that this inclusivity is a good thing. Show that it's a good thing, but I'm worried about that, and I'm worried that the typical approach from someone who's a great scientist or a great engineer is to see the importance to themselves of what they're doing and to think that the world will take care of it. It'll be used for a good thing no matter what. Yeah, look at social media and what happened to it. It's done great things for the world. It really has, but it's also created a lot of problems. And I do think we have a responsibility to think about the potentials for problems before we get into a new project. Now, it may be that if you think too much about that, you never do anything. There's a certain amount of leaping into the dark that you will always have to do. All I can do is sympathize. You know, Daniela, you're absolutely right. And it's maybe the best approach is just to see that it's a multi-step process. You start where you're starting, grow to the next step, then grow to the next step. You see the mountaintop, and that's great. But yes, you have a long way and many turns to the left and turns to the right to get up the mountain. Thinking about that now is a wonderful sign.
Thank
I
you very much.
commend you for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to everybody. What a great group. That slide I showed, hope, that's absolutely right. Wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. It has been an enlightening session. And this way of thinking not only of what you want to create for the world, but also what the world needs and what the world needs that it doesn't know that it needs. So considering all this and really like getting in touch with people, it's what I think is going to be able to these projects to progress and to really like keep going on after the time passes by, which you were saying is one of the important things, not only to have impact, but that this impact is going to last. So thank you so much for this session. I don't know if there's anyone who wants to add something, otherwise this will be all. And we are really, really grateful for you and everyone that is watching this for being here with us.
I think Nahid wants to ask.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, I want to say that the presentation was amazing. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I want to ask something. How to motivate people to continue innovating and participating in environmental projects in times of pandemic?
Well, actually, a lot of the kind of travel that we used to do isn't happening, right? We're all watching from all over the place, but we're using a new technology to get this done. I just finished doing a study with a major worldwide group on the impact of the pandemic on innovation. And what we find is that, of course, people are now working from home. There's a different kind of approach, but people are actually generating more patents now than they did before the pandemic. There is more of a sense of need because people are really worried about what's happening in the world. So I think that it's easier to cooperate with people you know when you're using this kind of a technique. What we're missing is the random discovery that happens when you're sitting around drinking coffee together or talking to each other about a sports match. A lot of times something will happen to you, and I'm afraid we're going to miss that over the long run. That's why I don't think things will go completely online. I think there will always be a room for, in-person activities. But frankly, the pandemic has made us realize we need more resilience. We need to be able to change. We need to be able to deal with massive social issues in a very quick way. How long did it take for seatbelts to become popular in cars? Now we have to do the same thing with masks in months, right? So anyway, I know that time's up. If anybody wants those slides, please contact Anna, or I would be happy to give them if you can get to my email. I'll happy to send a copy to anybody. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Professor Dasher. We were wondering if you could get a picture together, please.
Okay.
And so that you can smile, if you want to share this happiness with me, Dana, my girlfriend, is here, and we today it's our first anniversary. So.
Oh wow!
Oh.
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations! Wonderful.
Wow! Congratulations, Ivan.
Thank you.
And Dana.
And Dana. Wonderful. Thank you.
If you're ready, I'm gonna take the picture. Smile. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. I got it.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you
one
so
with
much.
Dana. Now we're missing one with Dana.
Dana, can you turn on?
Oh, okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for including me. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Dasher.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stay safe, please.
Best
See you
wishes to
soon,
all.
I hope.
Thank you. I hope
Thank
so.
you so much. It was an
Bye-bye.
amazing
Thanks, Carolyn. Thank you,
very
guys.
much.
Great to see you.
Thanks.